Well, hello, my devilish darlings. Today on Madame Roman's Mystery Empire, we're celebrating my favorite time of year, Halloween. And I wanted to do a creepy, scary story for the season, especially after the disappointment of reviewing the Netflix series Monsters, the Ed Gein story. So, doing the story of Anna Uckland that inspired the book and the movie, The Exorcist, seemed perfect. And learning her story and the events that are reported to have happened, I gotta say how terrifying, horrifying, and sad her ordeal was. Now, for those of you little morsels that are new to the channel, I offer wisdom highlights from a woman's perspective as we put our highest red bottom slippers on and strut our stuff down the silver brick road to the land of wisdom. We'll explore accounts of true crime, dark histories, mysteries, and mayhem in the constant quest of empowerment, knowledge, and the insight to survival. The following content contains material intended for mature audiences. Viewer discretion advised. Okay, so I'm not going to wear this thing the whole time. So, story time. One day back in 1983, yes, 1983, my mother was all excited because she was going to watch The Exorcist on TV, probably HBO. It had been about 10 years since the theatrical release, but I don't think she had seen it yet. I didn't know what an exorcism was, so I thought it was about exercising, like aerobics. I didn't get it. I had no concept or knowledge of the movie or the religious ritual, so I didn't get what the big deal was. So after it got dark, my mother sent me to my room to go to bed, telling me that I couldn't watch it. But try telling an Aries that they can't do something. It doesn't generally work. The curiosity was way too much for my little kid brain. I snuck out of my room in total darkness and army crawled on the carpet. I remember thinking how awesome I was at being unseen and stealthy. I made it to the end of the sofa to peer around the corner to see the movie I wasn't allowed to watch. Now, early production of TV sets required a team of standby weightlifters, a 20-year commitment contract, a master's degree in spatial arrangement, and a strict weekly furniture polish regimen performed every Saturday by the youngest member of the household. These things were huge consoles and basically members of the family once purchased. But that favorite aunt of mine that I spent so many early Sunday mornings with in cartoon mischief betrayed me. So I'm on the floor at eye level with the screen, which is across the room, and it's the only thing giving off any light. They were smart enough to turn off all the lights. But after a few minutes of being stationed incognito, I sacrificed the cover of my disobedience and willingly made my presence known when my terror was too much to keep quiet. I had to seek the comfort and reassurance of someone to protect me. That actually sounds really sad. Funny thing is, I don't remember what happened after I revealed my stealthy maneuverings. I don't remember if I was sent back to my room alone, if I was comforted or punished. No memory. Probably because I was so terrified of the shit that I had just witnessed. The images of that movie gave me nightmares for decades. Even after years of watching horror and shock movies, still nothing beats the terror that movie produces. The Exorcist was and is by far the scariest movie for me. What's even funnier is when I look back and realize that the adults in the room were in complete dark, watching this movie completely engulfed and terrified by the story of this demon-possessed child crawling around on the floor. And then I popped up from behind the sofa with only the light of the TV shining on my face. My 8-year-old little self must have scared the shit out of them. Now, the movie The Exorcist was released in theaters the day after Christmas, 1973, which is obviously on purpose, the biggest Christian holiday of the year when families gather in harmony and love, and this movie comes out. So this movie was like no other that had been made or seen before. When it was released, contemporary movies didn't have the level of graphic effects or forbidden subject matter that it did. All the effects were done pre-tech, so no CGI, no AI, everything had to be made to look real in real time on real humans. I know that's a concept that's quickly losing its flavor. I had no idea that Max von Sydow was only 43 years old when this movie was made. It's crazy. The bone-chilling sounds, voices, makeup, and subtle effects like the head spinning, body floating, and the split-second demon face in everyday scenes was incredibly effective at sending into the dark corners of the mind doubts about the fragile reality that we live in. Serious OG filmmaking. Not only were the effects startling, but the taboo subject matters horrified audiences. For a child, an innocent little girl, to be saying and doing the shit that Regan and thereby Linda, who were both about 12 years old, was profoundly shocking. And it was all told in this eerie, realistic storyline. The poor, helpless mother, frustrated and unsure how to help her child, who is the person she most loved and feared at the same time. The worst parent nightmare ever. The combination of vile obscenities, graphic imagery, blasphemy, and severe sexual content coming from a child had many audience members vomiting, fainting, leaving the theater halfway through trembling and nauseated, and some had heart attacks. But the extreme reactions only helped promote the movie, creating demand, and the long lines culminated into shattering box office records. But most of the scenes that shocked audiences came from a book of actual events, which is even scarier. The movie was based on a book of the same title that was written by William Peter Blatty in 1971. But the book was inspired by two cases of actual events, Anna Uckland in 1928, which happens to be the same year that Blatty was born, which is kind of a coincidence, and Roland Doe in 1949. But today I'm just going to stick with the case of Anna. It is interesting how Blatty came across these stories. After all, this was pre-tech. But Blatty was raised by a single devout Catholic mother, attended Jesuit school, and got his bachelor's and master's degree from Georgetown University, which is a private Jesuit university. He also had a great uncle that was a notable priest. Blatty seemed a strict, devout Catholic, actually filing a canon petition with the Vatican against Georgetown University because he believed that they had strayed from Pope John Paul's instruction on Catholic Church doctrine by allowing speakers supporting abortion rights. Which is ironic, because although he seemed to follow that belief with his many children, he chose to ignore the beliefs about divorce since he was married 4 times. But I digress. Now, in 1936, there was an article in the Times Magazine that referred to an exorcism that had occurred in Iowa in 1928 by Father Theophilus Reisinger. Man, try saying that 5 times fast. The information was from a pamphlet called Begone Satan that had been written in 1935 by Reverend Carl Vogo, who had interviewed witnesses to the event. But perhaps it was through this pamphlet that Blatty got much of his inspiration for his book. Many of the scenes in the book and the movie were similar to the events of what happened to the woman in the pamphlet. On a side note, that little pamphlet, Begone Satan, was produced to help other priests in the rites of exorcism in order to drive out Satan, and it sold for 15 cents. Maybe we need to get going on doing an exorcism of the Satan that's destroying our U.S. economy. Now, some of these events occurred over a century ago under strict secrecy of the Catholic Church, which doesn't always have the best reputation of being the most revealing of information. So the facts can vary depending on the source. I've tried to do my best to stick to primary sources as I can get, but the point really isn't about specifics. The point is that the events happened and were believed, so bear with me. It has been reported that the woman exorcised was Anna Uckland, or possibly her real name was Emma Schmidt, or Mary Lawrence. She was 14 years old in the late 1890s when she began exhibiting things that were strange and unusual. I am strange and unusual. Sorry. By the way, this is not Anna Uckland or Emma Schmidt, nor does she have anything to do with any exorcism. This is Anna Anderson, the woman who claimed to be the great Grand Duchess Anastasia. You know, like the movie Anastasia? And this isn't the Emma Schmidt that had an exorcism performed on her either. This Emma Schmidt was born in 1865 and died in 1924. The events happened in 1928. This Emma Schmidt would have been 65 and dead. So if you see someone claiming different, they don't know how to do research or even a simple Google pic search. I'm going to call the woman in the pamphlet Anna. So Anna was believed to be born in the 1880s in Wisconsin or maybe Switzerland or maybe even the East Coast. But again, not important. She was raised by German immigrant parents. Her mother was a devout Catholic, but nothing more was really known. We don't have a sense if she was loving or kind or weak or cruel, so yeah. Her father, on the other hand, was said to have had some issues. Some serious fucking issues. He was abusive, alcoholic, womanizer, and he bitterly hated the Catholic religion and anything to do with it. So what a wonderful upbringing that must have been. Here's a man who absolutely hates and resents everything his wife and the mother of his child believes in. And who do we think is the most vulnerable and going to get the brunt of that negative energy? Anna. Anna, the child that had been raised in the Catholic faith, attended church religiously, was sweet, kind, caring, and loved her faith-driven community, suddenly started to experience strange and troubling events. At first, attending church for any length of time, which had always been something she loved, made her feel physically ill and filled her with terrible dread. Then she couldn't take communion, pray, say the name of Christ, or even be around sacred images, and eventually she couldn't step into a church. She started to hear voices suggesting horrendous things to try and arouse the most shameful thoughts. Now, with this information in particular, I think that we were supposed to infer or conclude that she was exhibiting some extreme sexual knowledge, vulgarity, and display unspeakable acts, like shockingly so for a 14-year-old in the 1890s, or for any time in history. She was plagued with hallucinations, hysteria, and nervous spells, and had thoughts and feelings of being compelled to attack her spiritual advisor and suffocate him. When a fit was over, she would have no memory of what had happened and what she had done. These events and thoughts were gradual and progressive over the course of years, even decades, leaving her feeling isolated, alone, and that she was going insane. She no longer went to church, visited friends, or had visitors. She was becoming more and more withdrawn, depressed, and hopeless. Her family took her to the best doctors, varying in specialties, from medical to psychiatric, but none could find anything mentally or physically wrong with her. Granted, the psychiatric options at the time were not the best for diagnosis or treatment. I mean, think about how people with mental illnesses were treated at the time, or now. Her family had pleaded with the Catholic Church for years for help, but the clergy was skeptical of her condition and the need for something as extreme as exorcism. There were years of observations and discussions, even witnessing all of her shocking behaviors, including speaking in different languages that she had never read or heard. The church finally acknowledged that she was demonically possessed and agreed to help. As a last resort, after years of torment, the first exorcism was approved and performed by Father Theophilus Reisinger and considered successful. Father Theophilus was born Francis Xavier Reisinger to farmer parents in Bavaria in 1868. When he was 12 years old, he survived a terrible illness which almost took his life, and after recovering, he devoted his life to God. He became a monk as a young man and came to the U.S. and served in New York, Michigan, and Wisconsin. He was intelligent, diligent, exemplary, and severe in his religious devotion. As a priest, he was successful at being a powerful teacher and gained popularity with his imagination, his powerful voice, the fluency of his speech, and his sympathies for sinners. Reisinger also was known for his nerves of steel, iron constitution, and intensely active life as a warrior knight for God. As I said, it was believed that the first exorcism Reisinger performed on Anna was successful, but years later, when she was 40 years old, Anna was in need of extreme spiritual remediation once again. During the many years since her first exorcism, Reisinger had performed many more exorcisms throughout the U.S. and had become kind of a rock star in the field. But this time with Anna, Reisinger decided that the exorcism would be held in absolute secrecy. He obtained permission from his friend of many years and fellow pastor, Reverend Steiger, in Erling, Iowa, to hold the exorcism at St. Joseph's Parish, which had a convent of Franciscan sisters. Reisinger, Steiger, his housekeeper, which was also his sister, and the convent sisters were the only ones that knew about the exorcism, and they were to keep it so. The parish was some distance from where Anna lived, allowing her identity to be kept. It was also in a quiet, smaller, more remote area with farmers that would be in the fields most of the time, giving privacy to the ritual. And conveniently, Erling was on a rail system that would allow direct and easy route of transportation of the affected woman. Reisinger arrived on the same night, but on a different route. It was all very cloak and dagger and kind of reeks of money. My guess is that the woman's family was well off. The facts to change her identity so vigorously, her date of birth, where she was from, how old she really was, even perhaps her father's real name, the cost of having to take her to all the best doctors, all the facts, even to this day, are vague and speculative. It's all very sus that so much trouble would be taken for the average person, but I don't know. With Reisinger's experience, he believed that the devil would try any tactic to delay the ritual. And some could say that this was the case after Anna arrived and settled in. She was served a dinner blessed by the sisters at the convent. She refused to eat and purred like a cat, even though she had not been told it had been blessed. The food was switched out for non-blessed food, and she ate without incident. The first ritual started the next day. The strongest nuns were chosen to hold Anna down to the bed while Theophilus prayed. Anna became unconscious, and her eyes closed so tightly that they couldn't be pried open. Suddenly, Anna lifted and threw through the air and landed above the door, where she clung like a vice grip. I'm right in the middle of a story, Pete. What are you doing? Theophilus's command, the nuns pulled her down, but not without using those beefy muscles. Once again on the bed and the praying resumed, a horrendous smell started to appear in the room, and she started howling like a pack of beasts, terrifying those present. And apparently, these sounds were so loud that people around the town started to ask questions. They could smell the nastiness and heard the noises coming from the convent and were flipping their shit, asking questions and imagining the worst, which couldn't have been as bad as the reality of the situation. I gotta say, this is one of those things that to this day freaks the shit out of me. The sounds in that movie, I cannot imagine hearing anything like that in real life and sticking around. Sorry, not my thing. Now, this was intense. Day after day, sometimes 12 hours a day, the effort to expel the devil from Anna was long, overwhelming, and exhausting. The sisters and Steiger had to take shifts and step away to regain themselves during these exorcisms. But Father Theophilus, this guy was badass. Even at 60 years old, he stayed to fight the devil out, hour upon hour. The body of Christ compels you. Anna was unable to eat, but she was able to spit, foam at the mouth, and vomit unmentionable excrements. Now, when I first read this, I thought it meant that she was trying to defile anything holy with words spoken, but no. What? Are you trying to expel anything? Huh? Are you trying to get the devil out? The book went on to describe that what came from the pitiful creature could fill a pitcher or even a pail with vomit of an unnatural stench resembling macaroni or sliced and chewed tobacco leaves. Okay, so FYI, I'm no medical professional and I don't play one on TV. But I do know that a person can vomit coagulated, partially digested blood from an upper GI bleed, from inflammation, an ulcer, tears, or internal bleeding. And I would think excessive vomiting, which 20 to 30 times a day, as described, would be a little irritating. And what would cause someone to vomit so much? An extreme emotional response to something. Most people have heard of someone with a sensitive stomach. Well, this would be a more extreme case. A good boy. Oh, look at the toe beans. Oh, we should have an OnlyFans channel just for Pete's toe beans. Over the course of these sessions, in between Anna's howling, mewling like cats, billowing like cows, and barking like dogs, or the satanic rendition of Old MacDonald, Theophilus was able to engage in conversation with the demons possessing Anna in various languages. The devils even had the nerve to correct Theophilus when he misspoke. But these conversations were done with Anna's mouth closed tightly and no perceptible movements of her lips. The spirit spoke from somewhere within her body. The first demons were Beelzebub and Judas Iscariot, the traitor of Jesus. Apparently, Judas was summoned to torture Anna so that she would hang herself. So why would either of these characters want to harm this woman? Other than they are demons, and why not? We have the next two souls on the possession is right, her father Jacob and her aunt Mina, both of whom died years before. So Jacob, this guy, as I said earlier, was beyond an ass. But it is now released to Father Theophilus that Jacob was doomed to damnation because he would not repent for his sins. Jacob lived in sensual lust and took every opportunity to ridicule Anna and anything holy. Anna was pure, innocent, and virtuous, and his hate was equal. It was so strong he damned himself and his daughter. He cursed her for repeatedly refusing to commit incest with him when she was a child. He summoned Beelzebub and Judas and wanted the demons to entice her to commit every sin against her chastity and ruin her body and soul. Then there was Auntie Mina. Anna's mother's sister, Mina, revealed to Father Theophilus that her damnation was because she had been having an affair with Jacob while Anna's mother was still alive and after her death. Mina had told him that she had murdered her 4 children. Now, other sources have said that she was a witch that fed Anna herbs enticing a spell, or used a Ouija board with Anna, or tried to encourage Anna to join Jacob in her sexual acts. But I can't verify these claims, and because they aren't in the book Begone Satan, they seem a little suspiciously misogynistic to me, which is surprising because the Catholic Church has a bit of a claim on proliferation of misogyny. It seems like if the demon Mina had come forward and claimed this, there would be no reason not to include it in the book. After all, Reverend Vogel does claim that among Judas, Mina was the most evil and venomous to Anna and the church. The ritual sessions lasted from early morning until late at night, day after day, and manifested physically in Anna. She became unrecognizable because her facial features distorted, appearing pale and deathlike and emaciated when not in the grips of the sessions, to eye-bulging lips swollen to the size of hands and skin as red as coals when she was. Her body contour no longer resembled a normal human, albeit on the emaciated side, to a bloated mess that everyone present thought may burst at any moment. Her abdomen and limbs, hard as iron and stone, would press against the bed with so much weight that the beams of the iron bed bent to the floor. And when the ritual was complete for the day, she would return consciousness and to herself with no memory of what had happened. Holy water, benediction of the Blessed Sacrament, and the mention of Archangel St. Michael, because he cast Lucifer out of heaven and was God's greatest general, were the most hated and effective methods against the devil. When applied during the exorcism, Anna's body would twist and writhe. The devil would claim it was being tortured unbearably. Once Father Theophilus placed a written prayer on Anna's forehead during a session, and in an instant it tore into 1,000 pieces. Now, like I said, this was all taking days and weeks, and like Reisinger had said, the devil would try to prevent, delay, and distract from being exorcised from Anna. Pastor Steiger later admitted to severe doubts of his dear friend Father Reisinger, and wanted the whole thing to end and Anna out of the parish. He was having visits from mysterious rats in the walls at night and thunderous train-like noises that could not be explained. Steiger even experienced a car accident that totaled his car when he was struck blind while driving. Steiger also later believed that all these experiences were the devil's tactics to prevent the success of the exorcism. It was decided at one point that it takes a village. It was believed that atonement was needed for the ritual to succeed. So Steiger requested that the parishioners keep up their regular attendance at church, as well as pray, fast, and pay penance, cleaning themselves of sin in order to defeat the devil possessing this woman. The effort seemed to work. The devils became weak, and on the 23rd day at 9 p.m., the grip of possession was defeated. The devils agreed to return to hell. How cordial. Suddenly, Anna's body bolted upright with only her heels touching the bed, and the final command from Theophilus: "Depart, ye fiends of hell! Begone, Satan!" The devils retreated, and her body fell back limp onto the bed. In the distance and fading like some bad 80s song, voices could be heard repeating, "Beelzebub, Judas, Jacob, Mina, hell, hell, hell." Anna opened her eyes and smiled, and for the first time in 12 years was able to say, "My Jesus mercy, praise be Jesus Christ." With tears of joy and jubilance at the victory, everyone in the room suddenly realized there was a horrendous something died in your gut smell, and opened the windows. A final farewell from the devil, I guess. Anna's life after the exorcism was normal. She was able to return to her piety and devotion to her religion. Okay, so in my research, I also read the book Devil Rocked Her Cradle. Stupid title. By David St. Clair, who states in the very beginning that he consulted official Roman Catholic Church channels and that this story is true, but then went on to make up a story about Mary Lawrence's past that he claimed had the exorcism performed on her. It laid heavily on the Aunt Mina is to blame in her bad girl trope and was a little too sympathetic to Mary's father Jacob. He suffered the loss of his mother as a young man and suffered the abuse of his alcoholic father, and he was sad for his poor daughter, blah, blah, blah. Why are we barely mentioning the sick business that he wanted to have sexual relations with his daughter? That would destroy any child. Oh, see, and now he's upset because I get upset. And no surprise, Mina was portrayed as the bad seed, the loose, rebellious, bossy black sheep that showed her ankles and would not obey her parents. There's even suggestion that she murdered her father-in-law, her husband, her mother, and her sister because she was so greedy, lazy, and evil. It seemed the writer was just sensationalizing Anna's story like everyone else, so to me, I'm back to how can I tell what's fact versus what the author made up. So here's my Madam Roman Wisdom highlights for the day, or Madam Mystery. A tactic to ward off an attacker is to get nasty. Pee and shit yourself, vomit if you can, scream like you're casting a spell, or cursing that his penis will fall off and be eaten by maggots swarming in the muck of his fragile ego. Act like you lost your mind, anything to become too much effort. Become so volatile to a predator that he doesn't want to fuck with you. Victims of sexual assault and abuse have been known to gain weight, not keep up their personal hygiene, let themselves go, in order to avoid a predator's attacks. Maybe this was Anna's way of protecting herself since no one else was. Perhaps she felt no one believed her. Perhaps she went to God and felt unheard. Maybe she was just the warrior she needed to defend herself from her father, and it was a heavy price to pay. It doesn't matter if it was psychological or spiritual. If her torment was from her mind's capability or lack thereof to handle the trauma from her father or a demon, the poor girl was tortured for years, decades. That is chilling. That is what is scary. Thank you for listening to the end, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to check out my other videos about MAGA-loving Glenn Rogers, Dennis Nilsson, who wanted life to imitate art, or the Times Square Ripper, Richard Cottingham, who wanted to be the best serial killer. I also did a review on Netflix's series Monsters, the Ed Gein story, which had some interesting interpretations of his story. Please let me know if you have any comments or questions, or even your own experience or thoughts with watching The Exorcist. It seems, especially for the older gens, they know exactly when and where they were when they saw it. And I gotta say that knowing that this was based on an exorcism that actually happened, it makes it even scarier, believed or not. I didn't watch the movie again for this video. I had a hard enough time trying not to freak my shit just pulling the images. They're scared, haha, it's Halloween scared. Then there's you're 50 years old and you want to sleep with a nightlight scared. I research, write, and talk about sick shit every day, and this is the most nightmare-provoking subject I experience whenever I picture those images or sounds in my head. Fucking living rent-free. I may have to do some serious cleansing of my soul just not to feel that cold whisper at the back of my neck. As always, thank you so much for watching. Be safe, sending you silver streaks of wisdom.